Hello there, and greetings. This is a huge viewer request video on, of course, talking about the many countless multifaceted horrors that is the educational system. It doesn't matter if it's Canada, the United States, or Europe. It doesn't matter if it's a private school either. Getting a genuine life lesson reality check on natura naturans, the natural order, to understand things, critical thinking of young people. I don't have any kids myself. I wished I did, but I don't. But I had an enormous amount of people ask me this. I could easily make a dozen videos on this, but there are some key parameters that I'd like to mention that helped me a lot. Because look at me, just, I say, well, I ought to listen to you. You're covered in tattoos. Yeah, I'm actually incredibly intelligent, however. I don't actually praise intelligence, i.e. empirical knowledge, or episteme. Rather wisdom, which is true comprehension, because descriptions are not explanations. Anybody could give you descriptions of a horse, its height and its weight and what it eats and so on and so forth. But no, the essence of what a horse is, to have true comprehension. Say the horse whisperer. This is the difference between, say, a horse veterinarian and the horse whisperer, who's an actual expert on the psychology of horses, how they think, what a specific movement of a horse. Well, I actually don't know if you know the video. They made a movie about it called The Horse Whisperer. There's a difference between empirical knowledge, i.e. episteme, and this is the reason, of course, why doctors are the second leading cause of death. It's because these are people that are highly educated, but they never truly learned to first do no harm. I hear that doctors today don't even take the Hippocratic Oath. So there's a huge difference between highly educated and actual comprehension and understanding, and that's incredibly important. And I forward this to you, and it's incredibly telling. I've never heard anybody else mention this fact, and it is an undeniable fact. It wasn't the fact that, well, these are people of superior breeding and education. No, it's not that. It's that the rich people back between the 13th and roughly the 17th century, they had a classical education. Well, they had a classical education. Why do you think that great minds, and of course there are exceptions, like Jakob Böhme was basically a German podunk farmer, yet he had unific visions, which of course are transcendent to, of course, learning. This guy would have been considered just, a dumb, unintelligent, unlearned German goober back in the day, and yet the metaphysical writings of Jakob Böhme are absolutely incredible. So there are those exceptions. But I'm pointing to the fact that some of the sharpest minds have said stuff that people can't comprehend. People like the person that wrote De Divina Proportione, or Theoria Philosophiae Naturalis, Roger Boscovich. I dare people to download that book off archive.org. It will literally bend your mind. It's like, well, did these people have something, superior to us? I mean, what was going on? These people had classical educations that shaped their mind in such a fashion. Talking about Aristotle, Plato, on and on and on. It literally does shape your mind in a very, very, very special way. I'm not saying there's anything special about me. Look at me. I'm fat, bald, heavily tattooed guy, yet my mind is as sharp as a razor. I mean, I am incredibly intelligent, but I'm not saying, there's something special about me, that I knew that all my teachers, were blathering fools and that I should not have listened to them, and I took my own advice. I did not. I hung out in the libraries. I'm going to consult the masters of ancient days, because I knew that the smartest minds are actually composed, incredible material. People like Roger Boscovich, Nikola Tesla. By the way, Nikola Tesla's favorite book is Theoria Philosophiae Naturalis by Roger Boscovich. Most famous picture of Tesla with one hand on his head and the other hand on the book is on that book by Boscovich. What did these people have? They had an education that shaped their mind in such a fashion that gave them the toolbox within their head to have genuine comprehension. And there are some really fundamental things that they don't teach or talk about in school, such as, and there's a huge difference between math and arithmetic. Well, what's the difference? Well, Greek arithmetic is different than math. Go home and learn how to, do this special equation. You have algebra classes and trig classes, and I had all that garbage. I spent many years in college, which of course is a total waste. I did hang out in the university library and checked out an enormous amount of books of the great masters, and that's where, yes, I'm autodidact, I'm self-taught. That's because I knew this is where the gold was, and it wasn't from the blathering lips of these so-called teachers that were not teachers of anything. They were people put in place to shape minds, not in a good way, bend them into place and make them, nice subservience to blend in with society, be a working cog in the wheel of progress. And by progress, I mean the opposite of progress. Things that were done for me that I didn't realize until later that were so incredible is that my dad worked at IBM, for example, and they had a dumpster where they actually took all the stuff that was just slightly broken. He'd bring all that stuff home. He gave me a screwdriver, a Phillips, and flathead. I took that stuff apart. I learned how stuff was made. There needs to be a lot of hands-on stuff because all kids today, they're on their iPads. Swipe this way, swipe that way. And there are these little learning games on iPads, to sharpen your mind. And they're partially successful, but human beings have digits and eyes and three-dimensional vision for a reason. And hands-on is absolutely unbeatable. You should give kids things that aren't going to be harmful to them, of course, to take apart, to learn how things work. This really shapes a kid's mind more than you could ever know. Geometric devices like this, by the way, these are Penrose tiles. Each one of these Penrose tiles, they're all held in place by magnets, for example. Each one of these Penrose tiles is a mirror image of that special 1-1-5 Pythagorean triangle, and this specific Penrose tiling in three-dimensionality, you end up with this particular geometric shape. That kids play with these things, and they're not really playing. Of course, they're enjoying them, but they're actually having deep thoughts, and they're actually generating connections in their brain to think in terms of dimensionality that a two-dimensional iPad is not going to give them. Swipe left, swipe right. Okay, great, there's some nice little teaching tools on an iPad. Not really. Unless you give a kid a screwdriver to learn how things are built, how things are made. Don't give kids, obviously, things to take apart that have, dangerous capacitors inside them, obviously. It has to be something safe, and they need to be of a certain age. They're not going to get hurt, obviously so. Shouldn't that be a blatantly obvious statement? But geometric toys like this. I grew up with Lincoln Logs and Legos. Thinking dimensionality like that and how it builds, well, if I put this here, then I won't be able to do that. It actually develops a thinking process within the mind of a developing person such that they're able to, this is helpful for countless things, building things, fixing things. Say you want to stick an addition onto your home. People today, they don't have the dimensionality within their head to think how to build. Say, well, first I have to do this, but if I do this next, which is what I'd want to do, then I can't do that next. It develops these skills inside of your head. So give them broken things to take apart or fix. Those things are everywhere, by the way, and they're so useful for developing minds. Having a cheap microscope, if you could get like a cheap, and they're all over eBay, really good German and Swiss microscopes, dirt cheap. Have them go out and get pond water and creek water and leaves and branches and stuff, and just $150 cheap microscope is useful for endless things, for like getting microscopic splinters out of your finger to micro soldering. Every child, by the way, and I have several soldering irons around the house, and none of that I could grasp very quickly here. Learning how to solder, to fix things, to cut wires, solder ends, solder connections. It shocks me that people don't have the skills to know how to cut wires and strip leads and twist copper ends to make connections. It absolutely shocks me. Everybody should learn how to solder. Get like a Toroflex, Legos, Lincoln Logs. That dimensionality of building things is so incredibly useful. Every child, and I'm completely against games for the sake of games. Some games, however, shape minds in fascinating and wonderful ways, and that one game is certainly so chess. Being able to think several moves ahead. Most people today only think one move ahead. If I do this, that might happen. Most people don't even think that far ahead. If I do this, then that happens, and if that happens, then this happens. So kids learning how to play chess they don't even need another person to play chess with. The computer will actually play, and it's just as effective, if not more effective, than playing with against another opponent on chess. I grew up doing that. I was a chess champion in high school. They wanted me to go off to Frankfurt to play in the finals. Like, I'm not going. I don't care about that. So, every child should learn how to build a crystal radio. Not that a crystal radio is that important. It's not battery powered. I don't know if you know what a crystal radio is. But you hook it onto a piece of wire outside, like a fence line, a metal fence line or a metal pole. You can actually pick up radio stations and so forth. It's like, oh, that's so old school. It's like kids today don't do that. They have iPad. It's not about the radio and listening to scratchy radio stations with a crystal radio. It's about pushing the mind to understand waves and fields. I mean, this is something Nikola Tesla was an expert at. I mean, do you want your kid to actually understand natural order? Kids need to start thinking about things in terms of fields, frequency, and vibration. Even Nikola Tesla said, the secret to the universe is frequency and vibration. That's not an exact quote, but it's essentially the case. Reading things, like they said, these brilliant minds, not only do they not have the issues of distractions from computers and TVs and so forth, these brilliant minds came about because they had a classical education in Aristotle. I'm not a fan of Aristotle, but reading Aristotle is incredibly beneficial to developing a mind. You don't actually have to like it to accept the fact that that develops tools within the mind of a developing mind that gives them the ability to problem solve. Problem solving is not taught at all today in school. It's just not. Every kid also should learn about fallacies. This helps develop a sharp mind against the scammers and all the evils in life. Learn about what a bandwagon fallacy is. Learn about red herrings. Learn about reductionistic fallacies. Every kid should have within their mind the top 100 fallacies, at least the top 50 fallacies. I can't think of hardly anything more important in life. And there's so many things you could actually download for free on teaching a young person to learn about fallacies. It just helps them see through all the lies and deceit and nonsense that exists out there in life. When a child has, or a developing person understands fallacies, they can watch a commercial, not that they should be watching TV, but they can watch it, I can see right through it. Well, that's a total scam. That's a bandwagon fallacy. So when someone says limited production, it's like, well, even the word billion is limited. When you actually understand fallacies, you're able to see everybody and everything, 99% of which is a scam, to get your money, to influence you. You see right through it. It all becomes transparent. And yet, none of these school systems are teaching kids about fallacies. Learning about fallacies is insanely important. I've never heard anybody talk about young people learning about fallacies. There's almost nothing that's more beneficial than that. There are a few things, more than a few things, that are basically equal to learning about fallacies. Kids really need to have hands-on. There's just like no hands-on anymore. It's like learning how to type. Back in the day, I was the only dude in the class. Everybody else was a bunch of chicks, right? Typing class. And of course, now, it's way more important, but there's free lessons called like Mavis Beacon typing teachers. There's all sorts of typing teachers. Your kid really, really needs to take typing classes. I mean, it helps you get things done faster, communicate faster. It makes life simpler, better, easier. It's the difference between crawling versus running. Every kid, man, woman, child, should take typing classes. And there's so much free typing classes out there, it's not even funny. Your kids should have geometric toys, once again, like get them a Toroflux, get them some, who cares if it's used, get them a box of Legos, have them build things. That three-dimensionality and creativity in making neuron connections in your head is so insanely important. Study how things are built. Kids today don't have any problem-solving skills. There's important things that will make a sharp mind incredibly sharp. To read, and I can't go over the entire list again, I'll go over a few of them, like the Petaphesian. Yeah? The Petaphesian. A lot of these can be found on pdfdrive.com, by the way, thanks to one person. Petaphesian. by John Scotus Erigena, or John the Scot. Petiphysian, P-E-R-I-P-H-Y-S-E. I've had thousands of people over the years, young, old, whatever, all of them say, you know, I was kind of adverse, but this fat tattooed guy said something that'll make your mind sharp as a razor is reading the Petiphysian. I say, you're right. Didn't believe you. Not only to make it so sharp, I'm reading it again. I just like, mind-blowing sharp. It will. That's what these great, great, great minds like Roger Boscovich, Nikola Tesla, on and on and on. These people read things and that ordered their mind in a certain fashion. Kids also, too, should grow up listening to classical music. There's a reason why the Pythagoreans actually advocated to listening to music, good harmonic music. I'm not talking about, you know, rap or country or classical music. That actually also, too, structures the mind. Yes, a young person listening to classical, reading the Petiphysian, learning how to play chess, learning how to build things, playing with Lego sets. Sharpest kid within X number of miles radius. Bar none, flat out, no ifs, ands, or buts. Way better than taking them to any most expensive private school. Way, 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 way better. Not my opinion, hardcore fact. Another book would be The Enneads of Plotinus. The Teachings of Walter Russell. You don't have to agree with what's in the Upanishads, for example, because I'm not advocating anybody believe anything one way or another. Just the fact of how it orders the mind. This is the Principal Upanishads translated by Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan. He used to be president of India, by the way. There's Romanized Sanskrit in here. The way that it was sharpened, the wisest minds that existed in the Magadha Valley, circa 600 BCE. I mean, the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, this is it. Not only it, like I said, Plotinus, The Universal One by Walter Russell. The way it would actually help you think, young or old, makes no difference. You don't get this kind of education anywhere, not in college, high school, junior high, not even in fancy prep schools, not in the most expensive private schools. You don't need that. Schools are nothing other than babysitting centers, which is exactly what they are, of course. Even something else, the Upadisahasri, the Vivachudamuni, translated from Sanskrit. Incredible read. Don't have to agree with the metaphysics or the philosophy within, but how it actually makes the mind work. How the mind cogitates abstruse problem solving is so incredibly important. It's beyond important. It is the one thing that will save your life, make you free of misery, of others' evil doings. Of course, learning about fallacies too. Every kid should learn about fallacies. Every one, bandwagon fallacies, red herring fallacies. There's a list of them, on and on and on. Everybody should learn about them, child or otherwise. So, the Petiphysian, that's by John the Scot or John Scotus Erigena. The things that are fundamentally missing from the so-called highest educations today, which are absolute garbage, is critical thinking, reading the right stuff to structure your mind, and hands-on problem solving and building using special geometries, Lincoln Logs, Legos. Obviously that's for a certain age set. A Toroflux, for example, it's basically a toroidal slinky. I don't know if you know what a Toroflux is. Minds are three-dimensional. Messing around with iPads and swiping left and right. There are some educational things on iPads. I've seen them, and they do help in, moving the dendrites, but nothing moves them better than three-dimensional or reading the right type of stuff that structures your mind in a certain way. What could be better than a developing mind, learning about fallacies, surrounded by the best literature on earth, like Plato, Aristotle, Plotinus, Petiphysian, Walter Russell, Dominius, Proclus, Syrianus, Iamblichus, on and on and on. There could be nothing better. The kid would be a genius. Absolutely, undeniably so. it makes for a happier life, too. That's not my opinion either. That's a fact. So this is a viewer request video. I could actually make a lot of videos on this, talking about other little subsets of things that are so incredibly beneficial. And get your child a cheap microscope. Get a used one. $150, a really good German $150 microscope. There's all over eBay. Yeah, they're used in schools in the 60s, and they're piled up. People want to get rid of them. They're like, I got a basement full. I know people actually like that. They collect microscopes. They have a basement full of microscopes, and we get rid of them. A developing mind, go out and get pond water or, pond scum or leaves or anything. Stick it underneath the microscope. Learning about photosynthesis, learning about nature. Take them on nature walks. Teach them what this thing is in nature, how it is connected to this other thing, what its purpose is, what its essence is, what it's good for, what's bad about it, or what's good about it. You don't do that anymore. Should do that. It's the reason why everybody should have like an acre or two of land. If not that, then at least the park. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Hope you have a good weekend, and goodbye.